estimated closure of the Newport Bridge by studies that were commissioned were at least 25 minutes. You can move it at understandably a slightly quicker clip, but obviously a lot slower when you get to the northern reaches of Narragansett Bay, specifically Mount Hope Bay and going into it, both because the channel narrows and a smaller bridge to get under. Clearance, for example, at the Mount Hope Bridge would be just 6 feet, just 6 feet from above it. So when you're thinking about the concerns of it, even assuming, God forbid, we hold hands and we assume nothing ever happens. Because of the concern that it may happen, regulations are now in place that put an extreme burden on the state. And I think this is where we can kind of shift off to some other concerns. First, I'll probably hand it to John, I think first from an environmental one. Because of the size of the ship, the draft of the ship, there has to be some significant dredging. I'll leave that to John to go over a little bit. This exclusion zone continues to expand. This Jamestown Harbor, not open. Bridges, closed. So some of them you have pictures that we've looked at just from a simple traffic accident in the summer. And think about what that does to congestion. So this is the threat that we're talking about, and very much why I stand opposed, along with a host of other reasons that I'm sure will be laid out quickly. We can come back to these, but in the interest of time, I'll probably sit down quickly. The last thing that I'll do, just to kind of combine the two, is this. Although John put a nice picture of our beautiful state up there, so it might be a little bit difficult to see, but this has the zones of concern from the Sandia-Clark study as the ship would go up the path of the ship. The exception here, and I want to note this because obviously with some achievements and fights, we've made what I think are some small victories here, what I've referred to time and time again as the fight of 1,000 paper cuts. I'm not sure how far into it we are, but we're many into it. It no longer is an on-land sighting in Fall River, of course. I don't know, I was going to say audacity, but I'll at least say shocking to me, although it's less so now after having dealt with this for 6 years or so, is that they now claim it's an offshore facility. The offshore facility is 700 yards across the Rhode Island border in the middle of Mount Hope Bay. A 1,200-foot long dock, metal dock that would be built there. That when it's there, an exclusion zone would have to be maintained. Dislodging of the materials takes up to 24 hours. So you think about a ship coming in, not being able to tell anybody when they're coming in, waiting only to be driven only by high tide, then coming in through this beautiful waterway, and then sitting for 24 hours at least, dislodging, and then coming out with the same security zone around it, including the closure of bridges all the way out. When I came into this fight, it was difficult for me, frankly, until I rode the vessel in one of the LNG tankers and met it out in the ocean and rode it into the Boston Harbor, and I saw Logan Airport's, at least 2 of the runways that cut across the water shut down. So a Tobin Bridge shut down. Went to the top of this, I think it was a Norwegian vessel at the time. I know they come from different countries. And my hand, when I went up on top of where the captain was in the back of this 1,000-foot long vessel, my hand could reach higher than the Norwegian flag that was flying, including the post itself. So my fingers were higher than anything on the boat. And I was probably 130 feet above the water. My hand was 6 feet maybe, max, from the Tobin Bridge, and I watched the bridge shut down. This is not where I see Rhode Island going. And as I hand it off as a segue, you want to talk about where Rhode Island's going, Michael will start to, and I'd like to come back to. I had stood in front of, Madam President, your committee. I've never had so many, I've enjoyed pretty good union support over the years. I've never had so many sitting against me, because they're in support of this. Largely because they're in a desperate economy with jobs. But any jobs that have been generated, estimated somewhere around 400 or so, is in the building of this platform. And by any study, the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission, any business person that I speak to, and a host of things I think Michael might be able to speak to, including things like those that we have and enjoy in the Bay as we see it and should, from black ships to the Jazz Festival, to the Folk Festival, to any yachting, to the America's Cup that we hope to have, the Volvo, and everything in between. And by the way, as personally as me riding in this bay where I grew up and learned how to swim, fish, and sail, where I take my kayak into that very area where I could no longer go out to, or teach my kids or bring them out to that area, that's, to me, is making the wrong decision, when ultimately, with all due respect to my friends in the building trades and steel workers that would have some short-time work right now, ultimately, it would lead to approximately 30 jobs. When you look at the plans in Rhode Island as you can, from marinas that could be developed and where Rhode Island should be going, never mind how it should be preserved, the suggestion that this is a job winner for the state is frankly insulting. But at best spin, but really insulting. And with that said, I'll sit down for a moment, and obviously we'll just have an exchange later in the evening, but thank you very much for allowing me to visit. I'll hand it over to you.
Maybe I'll say it, I don't know if any people can hear me. Thank you so much, first of all, to the General, to Representative Bergero, Senate President Cloud-Lee, and everyone who played a role in making this happen tonight. It's really an honor to be here with you. I appreciate the credit to being given as a leader in this, but I feel humble in that my voice is just one of so many throughout, not just Rhode Island, but the region. And we've heard this issue characterized as a not in my backyard or NIMBY issue. Well, if that's the case, then Marietta Bay is the backyard to a lot of people, and we've seen tremendous support from all around Rhode Island and Southeast Mass, and it comes from, really, it's almost unanimous. The opposition to this project is nearly unanimous. A handful of folks that we found who support it tend to be directly connected to it or stand to benefit directly. Others, as the General pointed out, are lulled by the promise of jobs. But even on that, I would point out that the economic forecast and the jobs projections are based on some bold assumptions. The assumption of the ability to take part of what's now public trust, waters and land of Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and convert it for a private interest. And somewhere in there, and perhaps we'll get to talk about this, there's a public interest decision. Do we really need the gas? Certainly, none of us oppose natural gas, and it's not about LNG even as a cargo type. It's about the siting of this specific project, the scale of it, and the impact that it would have to our environment, to our economy, and the disruption to our ability to use and enjoy the bay. And so Save the Bay stands not just for the fish and the animals and the marine life that would be impacted by this project, and it would be severely, we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's about people's ability to use and enjoy and share the resource. Just this morning at Save the Bay, we hosted, it was sort of a historic moment in the way that Mike and I sometimes get where so many different, it was about ProSmart, the group ProSmart hosted at Save the Bay a meeting about port development in Rhode Island and the future of ports. And it was great. It was just a really vigorous discussion to see such diverse and sometimes divergent interests coming together around the table who could agree on the future of waterfront coastal development. They all agreed that there's a right way to do this and a wrong way. And I've been asked to talk about the environmental impacts, but I point out that there are lots of ways to do it right, and those are the ways we should pursue. Because it's Narragansett Bay, it's right at the heart of our economy, of our identity, of our quality of life. It's why you all love this place you live. And I know, as Senate President Cloud-Lee pointed out, I don't have to tell Jametowners not to make false choices.